Hi everyone, welcome to Tea for Torah. This is our first live stream ever. I wish it were a better reason to be doing a live stream, but some folks might know in the trans Jewish community that Lea Yocheved Andersen passed away recently. She was a trans female rabbinical student at Hebrew College, in addition to many other things. And some of the people who were close to her have organized a collective Mishna Siyum, where a bunch of folks are learning the entire Mishnah in her honor. And as part of that, I am learning the first two prakim of Mishna D'mai. And I will be streaming my learning on this channel live for the next 9 or 10 days. I didn't know Leia super well, but I had a couple of interactions with her. She was the first person to tell me what feminizing HRT does at a Shabbos dinner in Jerusalem, where it's possibly safe to say that we were the only two trans women in the whole city, even though I at the time did not know that I was a trans woman. But she saw it in me. And then we more recently, a month ago, had been put in touch to talk about our NIDA practices as trans women, and unfortunately that conversation never happened. So I wish I had gotten to know her. I wish I had gotten to know her better, and even in the time she had, she made a huge impact on so many people's lives. And Bezrat Hashem, this is a small way to continue that impact. So in her memory and in her honor and for the aliyah of her soul, I am going to start learning Mishna D'mai. Yeah. Just a word about how I'm going to be doing this. I have not learned any of Mishna D'mai before, and I'm not really going to do prep beforehand. So you're actually going to get to see me in the process of learning this. I'm not going to learn it first and then tell you what I learned. I'm actually just going to sit here and learn it out loud with you. The reason I chose Mishna D'mai was, one, because it was available, and two, because Rav Eitan Tucker says that Mishna D'mai is an understudied Masechet. And I'm going to find out why he thinks it should be studied more. And to get into it, let me switch my screen. To get into it, requires a little bit of introduction. So the whole Masechet is called, what is happening here? It's called D'mai. And D'mai is just a special word, not unique to the Masechet, I think, but it's a special term that doesn't have meaning outside of its meaning in the Masechet, apparently. And to understand what it means requires a bit of background. And I think what's interesting to Rav Eitan about it, at least in the context he mentioned it in the podcast I was listening to, was that this Masechet is going to get into how to have relationships between people who are more observant and people who are less observant or holding differently. And once I explain what D'mai is, the reason that this Masechet deals with that broader concept in question will hopefully become clear. So, the Torah lays out a system of taxation, which consists of several steps. There's Truma Gedola, the Great Truma, which is taking about 2% of your produce that you grew that year, which was the main economic product at the time, was actual food. So that's why I'm calling it taxation rather than tithing. It's most people, this was the thing that they had was valuable, was the food that they grew. That was their income. So you would take about 2% of this at the end of your harvest, and you would give it to the Kohanim in the temple. Okay, so once you take 2%, I might be getting this slightly wrong because I'm not an expert in the Trumas and the Maasrim, the Maasrot. Okay, so you take 2%, and then you've got Maaser Rishon, which is 10% to the Levim. And then you've got Maaser Sheni, which is, 10% for yourself that you would take to Jerusalem on the pilgrimage festivals. And then every 3 years, basically, you switch out Maaser Sheni for Maaser Oni, which is, instead of the 10% for yourself for the festival, it's 10% for the poor, etc. Like Levim are also included in this. Okay, so this is the system, this is the taxation system. You owe 2% to the Kohanim, you owe 10% to the Levim, and you owe 10% to enable you to set aside to enable you to celebrate the festivals. Or every 3 years, you owe that 10% not for yourself, but to the poor. And which would just look like giving these people your food, your actual food. So what does this have to do with D'mai? Well, Truma Gedola is the only one that is chayav mita bidei shamayim. If you don't give this about 2% to Kohanim, you are liable for death at the hands of heaven. And the other ma'asrot, these ones, don't have that high level of punishment, and the effect of this is that Amei Haaretz, people who are Jews but not in the circle of, basically kind of like Jews nowadays, like didn't go to rabbinical school or have like a high degree of Jewish religious education and background and observance. That's kind of an approximate parallel maybe to Amei Haaretz. So it's not like they don't care. They're Jewish, they're invested. But for whatever reason, there was this phenomenon at the time of the Mishnah or around then that the Amei Haaretz we could trust them, meaning the rabbis would trust Amei Haaretz to separate Truma Gedola for sure. That was something we know that like Amei Haaretz were careful about, but we're not so sure that Amei Haaretz are careful about the Maasrot, to Levim and for the festivals and for the poor. So when we get food from them, we have this problem that we are in doubt about whether the produce has been tithed properly. And the thing is, if it's not been tithed properly, no, you're not allowed to eat it. So the term D'mai is the name for this Am Haaretz produce that is not necessary, that we don't know if it's been tithed fully, properly, or not. And this is a whole masechet about how do we deal with this difference in level of observance between the chaverim, the like friends of the rabbis and the rabbis themselves, and the Amei Haaretz, who are doing Truma Gdola for sure, but kind of culturally, we just can't expect that if we get food from them, which is most people, it's most food, that it's been tithed properly enough that we can eat it. And in general, the solution for this is that if you are a chaver and you get food from an Am Haaretz, you just have to separate these, whichever two of these three ma'asrot are appropriate for that time, yourself. Again. Either again or for the first time, but we are assuming it's for the first time, and that's how we kind of get around this issue of D'mai. So that's what D'mai is. More or less, according to a summary that I read from Kahati's Mishnah. And now let's actually learn the first Mishnah of our parak. Perfect. Okay. So let's read it. Kalin Shabbat D'mai, Hashitin v'harimin v'ha'uzradin, uvenot shuach, uvenot shikma, v'novlot hatmara, v'hagufnin v'hanitzpa. Uvihuda ha'og v'hachometz shebihuda v'hakusbar. Rabbi Yehuda omer kol hashitin pturin chutz mishel dufra, kol harimin pturin chutz mirimei shikmona, kol benot shikma pturot chutz min ha-mustafos. Welcome to Seder Zraim, where we're talking about agricultural produce from like the 2nd century, where a lot of words are not super familiar. So I included a breakdown of the words I didn't know when I read this. This is the prep that I did, because like, it's impossible. It's going to be impossible to say anything about this without doing some prep work beforehand. So, Kalin Shabbat D'mai. The kinds of produce that are D'mai that we can be lenient about. Meaning we're going to be lenient about whether we need to take ma'asrot from this produce again. The things we're going to be lenient about regarding D'mai are the following kinds of agricultural produce. Hashitin, wild figs. V'harimin, fruit of the Christ's thorn jujube. V'ha'uzradin, crab apples. Uvenot shuach, white figs. Uvenot shikma, young sycamore figs. Venovlot hatmara, inferior quality dates which fall off unripe. Vehagufnin, grapes that do not cook well. I'm assuming that means grape leaves that don't cook well. Vehanitzpa, the caper bush. That's eight kinds of produce that we are not worried about, or that we're lenient about whether it's been tithed or not, and being lenient about that would mean we assume it has been tithed. But that's not all. In Yehuda, which is the southern part of the land of Israel, where it includes Jerusalem, Uv Yehuda, Ha'og, which is the red berry of the Venus sumac tree, according to Jastrow, Ha'og, V'chometz shebi-Yehuda, the vinegar or fermented things that come from Yehuda, Ve'hakusbar, and coriander. So 3 more things that we're going to be lenient about from Yehuda. And now Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda himself. I was about to say no relation, but obviously there is a relation. Just meaning the region Yehuda is obviously not named after Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol hashitim pturin, chutz mishel dufra. All wild figs are exempt from maaser, or from the stringency of D'mai. All wild figs are exempt from the stringency of D'mai, except for figs that bear twice a year. And kol harimin pturin, all fruit of the Christ's thorn jujube is exempt from the stringency of D'mai, except for the Christ's thorn jujubes that grow in this place called shikmona, which you could translate literally as the sycamore field. And kol benot shikma pturot, all young sycamore figs are exempt from the stringency of D'mai. Chutz min hamustafos, and the Jastrow corrects and amends this to hamustafot, which would mean except for fruit that has been burst open. It's hard to, and now I'm just going to talk about that. It's hard to, oops. Sorry. Okay, it's hard to make so much out of this because these are all, this is a whole system of agriculture that I don't do, I've never done, and that maybe isn't done so much any more, possibly with the exception of Palestinians who are still able to do agriculture in that part of the world. So I don't know exactly what it's talking about, but it seems like a lot of things that this hasn't, that a lot of these things have in common that they're not the highest quality. Like wild figs are not going to be as good as cultivated figs, and there's even one novlot hatmara that are literally defined in the dictionary as inferior quality dates that fall off unripe, grapes that don't cook well, wild things like the caper bush, which I believe grows in the wall of the kotel today. We're going to be lenient about those things, possibly because they are of inferior quality. Why would that mean that we should be more lenient about them? It's a question that I have. And also, why are these 3 products from Yehuda added onto this list of things we're going to be lenient about? And I imagine that the reason that those 3 things appear in this list in the Mishnah is, like, the reason those are added is probably for the same or a similar reason that we get the first list of 8 in the first place. Something's going on with what those things are, or the way that they get produced and gathered, that means that we can be makel about D'mai with them. And then Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda's exemptions, let me just see what Kati says about that. Kol hashitim pturin midin D'mai, shehalokech otam me'am haaretz patur milasram. So all of the wild figs are exempt because Kahati is exempt from the law of D'mai, because anyone who takes from them among the Amei Haaretz is exempt from tithing them at all. So it makes sense that they would be fully exempt, not just Mekel, but fully exempt from D'mai, because that kind of produce is exempt from D'mai stam, is exempt from Ma'aser fully, so it doesn't even enter into the realm of D'mai where we have a doubt about whether it's been tithed or not. It's just not going to get tithed. Chutz michel dufra, min ta'ana she'oseh perot pamayim b'shana ba'aviv v'kayitz, v'af hashitin shela ta'anim tovot hein. Okay, so the reason that these twice-a-year figs are not part of the exemption is because they are high-quality figs, which I'm assuming means they're high quality enough that they don't fall under the exemption of wild figs in general. So it's like it's a kind of wild fig. I assume it's a kind of wild fig that is high enough. It's like similar quality to cultivated figs, so it's worth tithing them. And on a certain level, that makes sense. You're not going to be sending, like, you don't want to be sending the Kohanim and the Leviim and the poor in the community your worst produce that you wouldn't eat. You have to send them stuff that you would actually eat and want to hold on to and that has value to you. You're not going to send them your trash. B'kol harimin p'turin midin d'mai chutz mirimei shikmona, harimim hagdolim shebash b'shikmon. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's not that interesting. It just means the explain what we already said, that the jujubes that grow in the region of Shikmona are the ones that are exempt. Okay, so that is Mishna D'mai, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph, and I'll be back tomorrow to learn Mishnah Bet. This learning has occurred in memory of Lea Yocheved Bat Avraham Besara. May her soul enter the gates of Eden, and may this learning uplift and comfort all of us who are in mourning for her passing, and be a beginning of the filling in of the space that she left behind. And in general, all of the content at Tea for Torah is sponsored in memory of these beloved neshamas as well. Okay, I'm going to sign off, and I will see you all tomorrow for more Mishnah.